All right, so I got this Gaggia from eBay, and it's in pretty rough shape. Hold on, that was me when I was still hopeful. This is me now. I just finished restoring this Gaggia Classic from 2001. At least that's what the seller told me. I bought it on eBay, as I was about to tell you there. And I gotta say, it was really hard work and it was pretty brutal restoration. But in the end of the day, I got it working perfectly. So here it is. I'm going to show you how it went. So on eBay now, you can't really rate sellers. I'm not sure what I would have given this seller as a score. And the drip tray area here is pretty badly corroded. So my first impression here is that there is a lot of corrosion, but also this is my first time inside a Gaggia, and I can see that it's fairly simple compared to a lot of other machines I've seen. First thing I want to do is check to see if the heating elements are good, so I'm just going to check to make sure that the resistance is in the right range, which is around 21 ohms or so. And I'm checking the other heating element as well, which it turns out is also just fine. So that's good news. So when the seller was describing this, they said that there was a loud pop and the machine stopped working. And so this is the culprit. This is the steam thermostat. But the brew thermostat looks just fine. So this front switch unit was really stiff and pretty hard to get out, but finally I did manage to squeeze it out, and I knew I needed to get it out because I needed the room in there to kind of get the boiler out and have a look at it. So I'm just going to spray these bolts that hold the group head and boiler together because they look pretty corroded. And while that penetrates, I'm going to remove the nozzle here for the pressure relief valve. Removing the group head screws, these were really stiff, but they came out just fine. The group head's made of brass, these are made of steel, so there wasn't any real issue. So the switch has to come out, and just to make it easier to make sure that I get the wires in the right place, I'm just going to number everything. And then I'll continue by taking the pump out. And I just need to remove the water tank and then free up this overpressure valve release here. And once I pull the steam knob off here, that frees everything up so I can pull out the whole guts of the machine, which is pretty cool. And then finally, I just need to remove this support for the pump so that I can really get to the innards of the case. If you've ever tried removing a 25-year-old piece of plastic, you can know it's pretty hair-raising. I was worried about breaking the clips that hold these in, and these pieces I think are pretty hard to source, so I really didn't want to break this. In the end, I strong-armed it with a pair of pliers, and it worked fine. I'm starting with just a dish soap and a scrubbing pad to clean the inside, and I can see at this point that none of this is actually coffee grounds, which is what I thought it was when I bought the thing. It's actually rust and corrosion of the stainless steel frame of the machine. And looking at the bottom, This is where I'm kind of losing hope. This is really a lot of rust. I'm pulling the feet off here, and I can see that underneath the feet, there's been quite a bit of corrosion happening around here, which is kind of normal, I would guess, for 25 years of something that sits in a lot of water. But either way, I could see that this was definitely more than I bargained for. Kind of giggling to myself here because this is Barkeep's friend, and I can see that this is just not up to the job of getting rid of this corrosion. But I'll give the whole thing a once over with the Barkeeps just to get rid of any minor stains and stuff on the outside anyway. And ever hopeful, I'll even try it with the plastic scrubbing brush. And this is on the inside corrosion as well, which is pretty bad. And I'm going to take that badge off the front. I can see that it should remove with a little bit of care. So a couple of taps and the badge comes out pretty nicely. And I can see that there's some kind of a gray coating on here that somebody had put maybe to kind of prevent further rust. It might be zinc or something like that, but it comes off relatively easily with acetone. So I'm just going to take off as much of it as I can. There's really plenty of that weird gray stuff all over the frame, so I'm just looking all around and getting off of it as much of it as I can. I realized that that Barkeeper's friend wasn't going to cut it, so I'm trying this rust remover that I just went out and got. But it's dripping a little, so I'm going to turn it over onto its top, so that way it won't drip so much. And I'm going to kind of spray it on all of the rust spots here. And I might as well get this label out of the way. I already ruined some of the printing on here with acetone, so we've lost our serial number, which means definitely no further warranty work on this guy. Rust remover's done a passable job. I'm gonna attack this with a sander, I think, as well, just to get off some of the worst parts. Most of the worst part is gone now, so I'm going to try the rust remover again. So this stuff's pretty good. It definitely needs some time to sit, but not too long. If you wait too long, it starts kind of re-rusting, so you almost have to time it just right at about 20-30 minutes or so. And after that, I got to do a bunch more scraping. This time I'm using a brass brush. And this is some Mother's Mag here that I'm going to polish around where the badge was, but also just the entire outside of the machine. Mother's Mag's working pretty well, and I'm pretty happy with the result at the end of the day. I think it looks not perfect, but way better. And now I'm just applying phosphoric acid. That should stabilize the rust to make sure it doesn't rust anymore. So any rust that's left here on the surface will be turned into iron phosphate, which acts as an inhibitory layer for any further rust. So we should be in good shape. And the following day, I'm just going to neutralize any acid with a baking soda rinse. So the outside's looking great, and so the question came up, what am I going to do with the inside? So after researching the various options, the thing that I settled on was high temperature paint that stops rust. So I'm going to mask off all of the exterior sections, anything that's visible. I don't want anybody seeing that high temperature paint. So the masking is looking pretty good. These are all the parts I'm going to be spraying. And I'm just going to give everything a really light powder, and then I'm going to wait a few minutes. Now I'm giving it a nice heavy coating. Okay, so while that cures, it's time to clean up all the accessories that came with the machine. They're all really dirty, but they should come out with some kafitsa and soap and water, stuff like that. That's all looking good, and cleaning these pipes, which used to be full of coffee, is really satisfying. It's full of coffee gunk, and I'm using kafitsa to get this stuff out. So here it is. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's all nice and protected, and I think it's ready to go for another 25-year run. So it's time to move on to the guts of the machine. Here's the boiler with the solenoid and the overpressure valve and steam vent and the wiring harness. So this is everything all stuck together. So it's time to start pulling everything apart. So I'm starting with the solenoid here, which has come off pretty easily. We're pulling out these silicone O-rings. These are pretty old, and I'm going to be replacing them with Viton, which is a much stronger material. So I'm just going to disassemble the rest of the solenoid, and this piece is absolutely refusing to come apart. So it's time to take it to the vise. It took a lot of effort. And on the inside, you've got the core, and it's all looking pretty scaled up, so this is going to need a good cleaning. So I'm going to let the kafitsa do the hard work here, get rid of some of these coffee oils and stuff like that, and give it a good scrub. So I'm removing the overpressure hose here and the overpressure valve as well. And then I had to use the vise again to loosen this, but once it was loose, it came apart pretty easily, and you can see it's got a lot of scale, and So that needs to be descaled. I'm going to soak all this in a solution of citric acid for a few hours until it's all nice and clean brass again. So these bolts on this boiler are really giving me a tough time, so I'm going to take the wire harness off so I can really get at them. So I'm really having trouble with these bolts, and this is despite penetrating lube and all sorts of stuff. So I watched this YouTube hack where somebody bangs the heck out of these bolts with some kind of tool. All I have is this backwards chisel and a hammer, but I'm going to give it my best shot, see how it goes. It's finally time. Moment of truth here. And it's not too bad, the boiler. But there's definitely some pitting, which these aluminum boilers are known for. And the gasket's in terrible shape. So I'm moving on to the group head here. This is the shower head, the distributor, and all that stuff. And normally this should be kind of the lighter weight stuff, but you can see that whoever used this machine didn't really clean it. And it just shows you why you should regularly clean your espresso machine. Modern machines will remind you obsessively to make sure you back flush your machine all the time. And this is why. This is just gunk. Solid coffee gunk of maybe 10 or 20 years. Who knows? Long story short, I'm going to have to boil this entire group head in Kafitsa in order to get the distributor to separate from the group head itself. So to be fair, I didn't really know that these bolts were even on this distributor. So it's good to see those, and now I know why it wouldn't come off. So I'm going to undo those bolts. But even with the bolts off, this thing is glued to the group head. In the end, I had to use a bolt to pry off the disperser. And if you ever wondered what 20 years of coffee drinking looks like, here it is. So it's back to the boiling Kafitsa for both of these, this time with a little bit of additional scrubbing. I want to try to get as much of that coffee off as I can. And now the group head can use a little bit of a soak in citric acid again. And I gotta say, it turned out looking pretty good. And it's time to give the steam valve a good clean, get that old gasket off there as well. And I'm going to be replacing this boiler anyway, but just to make sure that the rest of the coffee machine actually works first, I'm just going to use this boiler as is for now. So after scraping, I'm going to give it a really good sanding. Here it is with some 220 grit sandpaper on a very flat surface, which is my countertop. And I'm pretty happy with how this turns out. I'm pretty sure this will work just fine for now. Finally time for reassembly. And we're not going to use this gasket. Here's a brand new one. I'm just going to tighten up these bolts onto the boiler, and then I'm going to fit the overpressure valve back on and tighten it up, make sure it's nice and snug. And then I just need to reassemble the solenoid here, which looks like it's in pretty good shape, so it should be fine. And then finally just put the coil back on and the nut that holds it on there. So I'm reattaching the steam wand, and as I'm tightening it, I notice that the threads on one side strip. And that's not really a big deal in either case. I can either rethread it, or since I'm replacing this boiler, it's going to be new threads anyway, so I'm just going to get on with it. And putting the thermostats back on steam and brew, and the wiring harness is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much just the way it was when I took it off, so everything kind of was just in the right place, happily enough. And then I'm going to prep the case, so time to put these little rubber feet back on. So while this boiler's accessible, I'm putting the hoses back on, the pump hose and the solenoid hose, and then the pressure relief hose. And I'm going to reattach the pump mount as well to the case. So as I'm putting the guts of the machine back here, I can finally see some light at the end of the tunnel. Got some new bolts for the group head, so I'm going to use these to reattach the group head. And no, I'm not embarrassed to put in this old disperser. I think it kind of gives it a little bit of a vintage classic feel, and I kind of like it. But I realize, of course, that I forgot the gasket. So I'm going to take that off and put the gasket in first, and then I'll put the disperser in. And I'm super stoked to be putting in the shower screen, which is just fine. It's all original. And it's way more satisfying putting these wiring clips back on than it was taking them off. Just so satisfying. So I'm fitting the pressure relief hose and the water inlet hose. After I feed the water inlet hose through the mount, I'm just going to plug it into the pump and then wire the pump back up, and then finally just attach the pump outlet back nice and tight with the compression fitting. And I just really love the steam wand. I love that it's all copper. A lot of modern machines have replaced this with plastic tubing, so I think this is kind of cool. Gives it a little vintage vibe. So right here I can see this thermostat connector is a little loose, so I need to kind of rejig this, tighten it up a bit. All right, so we're kind of getting here near the moment of truth. It's time to kind of do the final assembly. So I just need to make sure that the intake tube is the right length for the tank, and then just put everything together, plug it in, and give it a whirl. So no affiliation, but I just got this awesome little lay flat norm core portafilter, so I'm going to give it a whirl. Not really sure what you were expecting, but I'm glad nothing happened really. It just kind of went on, and here's what it looks like with the infrared camera. So everything's looking pretty good and no strange noises or pop-in or anything. So yeah, I'm pretty excited, and here's me flicking the steam button and thinking that it's going to be like my Breville, and of course it isn't, because you have to open the knob, which I haven't attached yet. So yeah, clearly I'm pretty happy with that shot, but I'm going to adjust the overpressure valve so it's close to 9 bars. And the easiest way to do that is by volume, so I just want to look for around 250 mils coming out here. And the new boiler arrived, and it's looking super spiffy. So I need to pull the whole unit out and then replace it and put the new one back in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling it. The Gaggia restoration is officially complete. This is my first of many restorations and explorations of the Gaggia. Um, let's try the coffee. Yeah, there's something special about the espresso that comes out of a Gaggia. I don't really know what it is, but compared to my Breville dual boiler, which is supposed to be a really top of the line unit, this espresso just, I don't know, it just somehow tastes a little sweeter, a little je ne sais quoi in it, which I don't really know what it is. I'm not an expert on espresso, but boy, is it good. Oh yeah. Wow. So we pulled this thing apart and we cleaned everything up and we swapped out the boiler. So it's got a brand new boiler, even though the old boiler was working okay. It had a pretty deep pit, which I wasn't that happy about. So I'm happy it's got a new boiler. What's amazing about this Gaggia is that it's 25 years old. So I want you to subscribe because in my next video, I'm going to be comparing this 25-year-old machine to a machine that's only a few years old by a different manufacturer. I want to show you why that thing was destined to fail and why it's such a poorly engineered machine compared to this little beauty, which is so simple and so elegant and makes such an incredibly good shot. So I will see you in the next one. Make sure you subscribe for that video. I'm sure you're going to like it. All right, over and out. Came out nice and clean.